Oh hell no, she jigging. Alright, after this I'm about to play that new shit, but I want to play at least one round first. Let's watch some of this. Shit, I'm trying to choose a video. Just bro. Oh shit.
For nearly 5 decades, hip-hop and rap has slowly taken over the music industry, began topping charts just a decade into it. From Run DMC to Tupac, Biggie to Jay-Z, and Eminem to Mark, hip-hop and rap has become the new rock star. But it wasn't always this way. This multi-billion-dollar industry had its roots in violence and gang activity. But let's take it to the battle to this year and explore how it started from the humble beginnings and evolved into a phenomenon by looking into what some would call the godfather of hip-hop. Hip-hop currently is a worldwide commodity that has made millions and billions of dollars, but many people rich, especially people that came from the bottom. The rise of hip-hop is still among the poorest in the country. In 1953, a guy named Robert Moses was planning to build the Cross Bronx Expressway in New York City. One day began a similar business flow by allowing people to travel from the suburbs of New Jersey through Upper Manhattan and out to the suburbs of Queens in just 15 minutes. The construction was part of the Federal Aid Highway Act of 1956, aimed at constructing thousands of miles of interstate highways to connect all big cities in America. The goal was to create fast and safe cross-country travel. Sounds pretty cool, right? However, the expressway construction came at a huge cost to America's urban community. Over 60,000 Bronx residents were stuck in the expressway's middle. In addition, the highway served as a line separating the North and South Bronx, highlighting their distinct cultures and economies. Alongside the poor living conditions that the people in these Bronx neighborhoods were forced to endure, unemployment increased at an astounding rate. 600,000 manufacturing jobs had been lost by the mid-70s, and 30,000 fires had been started in the South Bronx alone. Schools lacked adequate funding and maintenance because the city didn't really throw money their way. Both political groups, the Black Panthers and the Young Lords, assisted the neighborhood through breakfast programs, garbage collection, and newspaper operations to educate residents about the city's pervasive discrimination and corruption. All of this caused an increase in gang activity that fought for power and territory. One of those gangs was the Black Spades. The gang formed in 1968 in the Bronxdale houses in the Sound-Used area of the Bronx. The name Black Spades was used from the beginning, despite rumors that they were first called the 777. Originally, it was a gang of young people who adopted the ideologies of the Black Panthers, Weather Underground, Malcolm X, and the Nation. Parkchester, Castle Hill, and Broadneck neighborhoods under the direction of the organization's first president, David Brockington, who was a member of the Nation of Islam. In response to the increase in crime, drug traffickers and heroin addicts who started to take over the neighborhood, the first division of Black Spades set the law and guarded Bronxdale houses. The gang quickly spread throughout the Bronx and the nearby housing projects in the Sound neighborhood, creating a subculture that encouraged music in gang members' lives. The various gangs each had their own music in the 70s. They walked around with a box radio blasting their favorite hits. For example, Ohio Players' Fire served as the theme song for the 25th Division of the Black Spades. Likewise, Jungle Boogie was also used by the Black Spades. In the 70s, every gang or crew had a song or artist that they identified with as their theme song. The Black Spades had grown in size by the start of the 70s, and its members started to lose sight of the original goal. Other gang divisions went unchecked, and the Black Spades turned violent. David Brockington resigned as 1st Division president because he didn't like how things were going. After that, he took over as Black Spades president. In 1971, South Bronx gangs were also making headlines across the country. The New York Times described the South Bronx as the capital of teenage gang power, noting that there were at least 85 gangs and thousands of gang members there. In addition, young men frequently got on the streets due to violent turf wars. It was clear that the violence had gotten out of hand. The South Bronx gangs met that same year to discuss how to reduce the violence and strengthen their groups in the actual community. The real test came in December 1971 with Cornell Benjamin, also known as Black Benji. He was a member of the Ghetto Brothers that went to negotiate with 3 gangs coming down from Hunts Point. They were beating up people along the way, coming to get the territory from the Roman kings. After attempting to negotiate with those Hunts Point gangs, Black Benji was reportedly beaten to death. Gangs all over the borough were outraged by the murder of an unarmed gang member who was pleading for peace. Many demanded war, however Benji's mom prayed for peace. On December 7, 1971, over 100 South Bronx gang leaders attended the barbecue peace meeting. As they entered, both young men and women were frisked. Local reporters were present, and in case things got out of control, police snipers were stationed across the street. The meeting was tense, and it lasted for hours. The venting and mediation worked. Finally, the gangs agreed to a truce outside the media spotlight. They met at the abandoned storefront that served as the Ghetto Brothers' headquarters and signed a detailed agreement with specific rules. Although the 1971 Peace Summit did not put an end to the violence, it did foreshadow a long-term trend of violent crime reduction in the Bronx. Harold Mayerson says this trend is still in place today, even though the South Bronx is still the country's poorest district. Like most urban areas, the Bronx has seen a huge decline in crime. In 1990, it was the site of 653 murders. In 2014, just 95. In the 41st Police Precinct, the notorious Fort Apache murders declined from 44 in 1990 to 4 last year. In the adjoining 40th Precinct in the South Bronx's Mott Haven neighborhood, they went from 72 in 1990 to 7 last year. According to Lance Africa Bambaataa Taylor, the peace meeting really helped. Bambaataa was present at the meeting as a member of the Black Spades. It helped to slow down a lot of beef. It took a lot of stress and sticking together to keep all these different groups under that whole family or truce that the Ghetto Brothers, Brother Benji, has put forward for everybody to come under. However, he's much more than just a gang member. Some would say he's one of the godfathers, if not the godfather of hip-hop. Africa Bambaataa was raised in the Bronx River Projects by his mother and uncle, and his family background goes back to Jamaica and Barbados. He had knowledge of his mother and uncle argue about the opposing philosophies of the movement. In addition, he was exposed to his mother's vast and varied record collection. Bambaataa quickly rose to the position of a warlord of one of the divisions of the Black Spades. As one of the head guys, his job was to build ranks and expand the turf of the young Spades. In addition, he was not afraid to cross territory to develop relationships with other gangs and their members. As a result, the Spades became the biggest gang in the city in terms of both membership and turf. Around the mid-70s, Bambaataa entered an essay contest and won. The trip to Africa, which would change his life and help establish what we now know as hip-hop. However, Africa wasn't the first trip he won. Well, in 74, there was a thing with UNICEF, and people had to write an essay on why they would want to go visit. At the time, it was India, so I wanted the essay to go to India. But when it was time for me to meet the decision staff, I was giving out flyers for one of my parties I was having, so I missed that trip to India. The next year was a trip to Africa, so I really busted my ass on the essay for that one, and I won that one. When Bambaataa came home, he was a different person. He realized his place in the world was far more meaningful than just being the warlord of a gang. He then started looking into Clive DJ Cool Herc Campbell's work. Bambaataa started planning block parties all over the South Bronx as soon as a fellow DJ let him borrow his first equipment. He even competed in a DJ battle against a close friend, Disco King Mario. He later founded the Bronx Rip organization, later known simply as the Organization, and started performing at Stevenson High School. He already had a solid party crowd made up of former gang members due to his prior status in the Black Spades. He earned a reputation as one of the biggest DJs in hip hop. As the Savage Nobles and Savage Skulls, among others, provided additional members to the group, which had the Black Spades at its core, and did the job of uniting many of them. Members started planning cultural activities for kids, infusing regional dance and music styles into what would later be referred to as the various components of hip-hop culture. At the time, the style involved sequencing popular songs from other genres, primarily disco and pop, and then using a turntable to record them, shortening or looping the samples, or adding a new beat. He had people, B-boy and B-girl someplace, and others who would do graffiti art in another area. He had people who would DJ and MC in another area. So I decided to tell him, let's come together under this banner. And this became the birth of the hip-hop movement and the hip-hop culture. He was influenced by a wide range of black figures in terms of ideology at the time. For example, we watched the movie Zulu, which was based on the 1879 conflict between the British forces and the Zulu tribe in South Africa. Before being overpowered by a number of Zulus who chose to spare their lives, the British appeared to have won. For the movie, he adopted the name Africa Bambaataa, which meant affectionate leader. In 1976, he changed the organization's name to the Zulu Nation. I always had vision, and I always thought I was meant to do a job or something for the creator. That was always on my mind. Start this organization to do things, especially when we started getting into the knowledge and we got out of the negativity and into the positivity. Under Bambaataa, the Universal Zulu Nation began organizing hip-hop events and gatherings in the South Bronx. These events provided a space for young people to showcase their creativity and talent in various aspects of hip-hop culture, such as DJing, MCing, breakdancing, and graffiti art. The Universal Zulu Nation also played an essential role in promoting social and political awareness among young people. Bambaataa believed that hip-hop could be used as a platform to address issues such as poverty, racism, and police brutality. He encouraged members of the movement to use their creative talents to raise awareness about these issues and to inspire positive change in their communities. He made his record industry debut as a producer with Soul Sonic Force's Zulu Nation Throwdown in 1980. The song served as a rallying cry for the Zulu Nation, a collective of like-minded Afrocentric musicians who had been influencing hip-hop since the late 70s. Africa Bambaataa didn't start recording as a recording artist until 1982, despite having additional production credits on a few later singles from 80 and 81. In 1982, hip-hop artist Fred Fab Five Red was putting together music packages in predominantly white downtown and Newport clubs. He invited Bambaataa to perform at one club. The first time Bambaataa was performed with a largely white crowd, making it one of the first times hip-hop would hit a different market, white culture, or white American culture. Attendance for his party became so big that he had to move to larger venues such as Fritz, Everman Lounge, the Jefferson, and the Bronx. Well, they were fun. They got loose. They liked stuff out there. High players, Cool in the Gang, Jungle Boogie, all that stuff. Mixed with the break beats and the disco stuff. Once I was getting more into the vibe, hearing a lot of punk rock records, I started playing a lot of their stuff, Flying Lizards and all those type of things that I might think that would get over there. And that's when my following started happening. In June 1982, after the Bambaataa Soul Sonic Force released a popular track by Rock. The song used musical elements from German rock, funk, and electro pop. Hip-hop was developed as a new vision for international harmony by fusing the various components and musical genres. The song quickly took off, even charting in the UK. The song combined the main melody from Kraftwerk's Trans Europe Express with electronic beats from their song numbers, as well as excerpts from records by Dave including Captain Sky, to create an entirely new genre of music called electro funk. It influenced various electronic and dance music genres, techno, house, and freestyle. Bambaataa organized the first European hip-hop tour the same year, along with himself, rapper and graffiti artist Rebel Z, B-Boy and B-Go Crews, Rocksteady Crew, Nation, DJ Grand Mixer, DLC, and the Double Dutch Crew, as well as graffiti artist Fab Five Phase 2, Intro 2000, Bambaataa's second track, The Perfect Beat, came in 1983. Then later, featured in the most important Americans of the 20th century issue of Life magazine in 1990. Just a testament to how influential this guy really was. He also contributed to Warlock Records' anti-apartheid project, Hip Hop Artists Against Apartheid, to creating the album Return to Planet Rock. He collaborated with the Jungle Brothers. In addition, he organized a concert at Wembley Stadium in London for the African National Congress in 1990 to celebrate Nelson Mandela's release from prison. In partnership with John Baker for Fruit Street Records, rappers from both countries performed at the concert, giving hip-hop fans the first introductions to Nelson and Winnie Mandela and the ANC. Bambaataa made the decision to launch his own label in 1991 after completing Decade of Darkness, 1990 to 2000, on EMI. Dr. Claremont Music and released his I Will Be Funk in 1992. That same year, Tommy Boy re-released the now famous Planet Rock on CD. However, the single Destiny This Nation released just 1 year later, suggesting that the label had been unsuccessful. Despite the fact that Bambaataa's recording career dwindled in the early 90s, he was still a busy and popular figure and DJ. However, it wouldn't be until 2016 shook the hip-hop world and raised questions about the culture of SA in that industry, and in particular with all of the artists and rappers that have come under the umbrella of Afrika Bambaataa. The allegations against Afrika Bambaataa were first made public by Ronald Savage, a former member of the Universal Zulu Nation. Savage claimed that Bambaataa had SA when he was just 15 years old. According to Savage, continued for 7 years. Bambaataa claims that Ronald Savage's accusations against him are unfounded in an attempt to defame his legacy and reputation in hip-hop. I, Afrika Bambaataa, want to take this opportunity at the advice of my legal counsel to personally deny any and all allegations of any type of SA of anyone, Bambaataa says in a statement to Rolling Stone. These allegations are baseless and are a cowardly attempt to tarnish my reputation and legacy in hip-hop at this time. This negligent attack on my character will not stop me from continuing my battle and standing up against the violence in our communities, the violence in the nation, and the violence worldwide. The problem was that Savage's story was later corroborated by several other men who claimed that they too, as young boys, had been taken advantage of by Bambaataa. The allegations were met with shock and disbelief by many in the hip-hop community, and also a ton of silence from many rappers. Afrika Bambaataa was revered as a hero and an inspiration by many in the industry, and in some ways he was, but what was he doing behind the scenes? The accusations seemed to come out of nowhere. However, as more and more men came forward with their stories, it became clear that there was a pattern that had gone on for many years. The accusations against Afrika Bambaataa are especially disturbing because of how powerful he was. Bambaataa wasn't only a respected and influential figure in the hip-hop world, he was also a respected and dangerous figure in the underground crime world. So the fact that Bambaataa reportedly used both of these powers to exploit very vulnerable young boys, allegedly speaking, is not only just a betrayal of trust, but also one of the greatest evils, considering one of the main points that he made was unity and fighting back against the system's violence and discrimination. The accusations against Bambaataa have had far-reaching consequences for the hip-hop community. Many have been forced to confront it head-on, or what some have done is keep their head in the sand. The allegations against Afrika Bambaataa also profoundly impacted the Universal Zulu Nation. The organization promotes the principles of peace, unity, and love. However, the allegations have called into question the organization's commitment to these principles. After previously disputing allegations made by alleged victims of SA, the Universal Zulu Nation has changed its stance. On behalf of the members of the Universal Zulu Nation worldwide, who have made their voices heard through their chapter leaders, we extend our deepest and most sincere apologies to the many people who have been hurt by the actions of Afrika Bambaataa and the subsequent poor response of our organization to allegations levied against them. To the survivors of apparent SA by Bambaataa, both those who have come forward. In a short span of time, Tekashi 69 overtook Trippie Redd's popularity, then went on to continuously troll him, and got one of his entourage to even sucker punch him in the face. He then rubbed salt in the wounds by posting videos of himself with Trippie Redd's ex at the time. Having finished touring Eastern Europe, countries like Slovakia and the Czech Republic, he took the last of his money to fly to LA. He and his team didn't have enough cash for a return flight, and Tekashi told everyone that if things didn't work out, they could just sleep on the beach. During that trip, Tekashi 69 recorded a video with another up-and-coming SoundCloud rapper named Trippie Redd. They shot the video for the song 1469. 14 stood for 1400, which was associated with Trippie Redd, and 69 stood for Tekashi. They also collaborated on the song Beat. During this time, Trippie and Tekashi were starting to become good friends, and in the music industry, the SoundCloud industry, both of them were on relatively equal footing. The only thing that Trippie Redd had over Tekashi was that he was signed by Elliot Grange, who was the CEO of Strange Music at that time, which is now more known as 10K. Elliot was the son of Lucian Grange, the owner of Universal. Through his collab with Trippie, Tekashi caught the eye of Elliot Grange, and through a recommendation by Trippie, in August 2017, went out to collab at dinner, and they got signed. Tekashi had also joined the 9 Trey case during this time, which according to the New York Times gave him, quote, a stamp of street authenticity and guaranteed stardom. This was something that shocked and disturbed a lot of people in the industry, more notably Trippie Redd. Trippie released a video on Instagram where he said, PDFs. If we gave dudes clout, it was an accident. But keep in mind, this wasn't until after the backlash Trippie claimed that he already knew about it. The details of exactly what happened hadn't fully come out to light, and Tekashi signed a record deal with Elliot Grange. However, there's an important part of Tekashi's deal that would become more important later on. Grange was eager to find new artists, so much so that he would provide a finder's fee to anyone who helped him discover the artists he signed. As part of this deal, a percentage of Tekashi's earnings went to Trippie. As Trippie explained, that's the dude that owns Universal Sun, okay? I'm signed to him and his label is Strange Music. You are not signed to Strange Music. In fact, you got a deal for 30 bands, and I made 5K on that because I got you your deal. Another thing, Trippie Redd said something about he was riding high at the time and said, than yours. I have more money than you, I have way more than you, bro, and you won't even get as far as I'm going. Everything Trippie Redd said in that video was true, but within a matter of days, the tables were turned. During this short-lived friendship, Trippie shared some beats he had with Tekashi. Trippie Redd had a decent time producer here working with his close friend. He no longer wanted his beats, so he sent it on to Tekashi. On November 10, 2017, Tekashi released the song Come. The song was would peak at number 12 on the Hot 100. This song would jumpstart Tekashi into the limelight. He would soon have more followers, fans, and clout than Trippie. The song took shots at KB, who was one of Trippie Redd's bodyguards. Around this time, Trippie's manager tried to become a peaceful mediator between the two. Trippie was shooting a music video in New York, and his manager invited Tekashi to come over and hash things out. The olive branch was extended, but 6ix9ine never appeared to accept it. The reality is that 6ix9ine was outside the building. He and his crew waited for Trippie to leave the video shoot. Eventually, Trippie and his entourage were spotted outside getting into a sprinter. Tekashi and his crew followed the van for about an hour. Sometimes he hotel where Trippie would stay. Inside the lobby of this hotel, Trippie Redd was handled and questioned. On Instagram was getting pretty wild. Trippie went onto Instagram to explain what had happened. He said that Tekashi no longer allowed to go on the street and threatened that if he comes to LA, things were going to kick off. In the video, Trippie said, "Bro had dudes waiting for me at my hotel, some 9 Trey dudes." Because Trippie mentioned on social media that Tekashi's entourage were 9 Trey Bloods, this prompted Tekashi to say something which has not aged very well. Tekashi accused Trippie of snitching. "Stop snitching, homie. Why you snitching, homie?" In the coming months, we would see a constant back and forth between Trippie and Tekashi. Tekashi's career had well and truly overtaken Trippie by multiple wells. which naturally prompted Tekashi to do pretty heavily. In December, the Jezebel article went into the gritty aspects of Tekashi's misconduct in 2015. The exact charge that Tekashi pled guilty to was the use of a child in a sexual performance. And Tekashi maintains that he didn't know that she was raped, nor did he engage in actual activity with her. Just something that was still quite disturbing to watch. This had the potential to destroy his career. Instead, subsequent singles proved that he only advanced his career even further. Tekashi was living proof that any publicity was good publicity. In 2018, he posted a video about how proud he was that he was bringing the spotlight back to his home state and city of New York. This prompted Trippie to jump into the comment section and say, he should pay homage because he wouldn't be nothing without me. I set the beef stuff aside, but I gave dude a name and he should be happy and showing me mad love because without Trippie Redd, he wouldn't have no Billboard hits or none that BS. Tekashi hit back with, don't let nobody tell you they made you. You don't got the power to make somebody if you can't make yourself. Back and forths continued. However, fans of both the artists wanted them to talk to each other and flesh things out. They missed the music that they made. In November of 2017, Trippie's manager failed to get them to speak to one another, but 6 months later, he got what he wished for. Tekashi decided to call Trippie on IG Live. This was one of the few times in Tekashi's life where he was the voice of reason. He spends the entire chat trying to cool things down and establish what happened at the hotel that night. Trippie is understandably quite frustrated. He felt embarrassed, and they would continue talking over one another. Then there's a rather ill-advised argument over which one of them is the truest member of the Bloods. Ultimately, the feud between these two was clearly not going away anytime soon. And adding an extra dimension to the beef was Tekashi's other feud with another rapper named Tato. Tekashi was talking on IG with a woman named Cuban Doll, who was involved with Tato at the time. Allegedly, Tato took exception to Cuban Doll. Speaking to Tekashi, she appeared on Instagram with bruises on her face. Tato also threatened Tekashi with the words, quote, I kill people. A few days later, Trippie released a 6ix9ine diss track name, which featured Chief Keef and Tato, and it was no coincidence that the title was I Kill People. In the aftermath, Tekashi had his first and perhaps only chance to take the moral high ground. Trippie had distanced himself from Tekashi for many different reasons, but he seems to have no issue working with someone accused of DD. Tekashi said, like, I understand being washed up. Matter of fact, I don't understand it. But capitalizing off of DD, that stuff is effing trash. Y'all trying to pick back your career and one is trying to make a career. This stuff makes no effing sense. Y'all capitalizing off of real damn beef. What type of stuff y'all on? And soon afterward, a lady would come between the two. In July, Trippie appeared on the No Jumper podcast with his girlfriend, Taylor. Trippie even posted videos of himself and his girlfriend making fun of Tekashi. But this relationship didn't last very long. Trippie went on Instagram to air his grievances. He said, as soon as we broke up, I heard that she was going to follow 6ix9ine. And clearly, there was some animosity between the two. And A-Lex decided to hit back at him in the most personal way possible. Trippie posted a picture of himself with A-Lex singing together, and their song of choice was F Love, the song about heartbreak by XXXTentacion and Trippie Redd. Soon afterward, nothing was left to the imagination. Tekashi posted on his IG a video of himself in bed, looking at a video on his phone where everyone is chanting F6ix9ine. He shows it to the one beside him, and lo and behold, right beside him. This video was not by Tekashi fan, and it seemed like he had gotten another control over Trippie in the most humiliating way possible. But 6ix9ine's victory wouldn't last for long. He was arrested by the feds just days later, eventually facing nearly the rest of his life behind bars. For his involvement in the 9 Trey Bloods gang, Tekashi was possibly facing a total of 47 years in prison and was presented with 2 options. He could take the hit and face nearly 5 decades behind bars going to trial, or he could completely tarnish his reputation in hip-hop forever and cooperate with the federal government. He chose the latter option. Tekashi would testify against 9 Trey members Duke, Harv, and he said that rappers Cardi B, Casanova, Jim Jones, and Chief Keef were all affiliated with gangs. On his Instagram talk with Trippie last year, he claimed that Trippie was not a real blood. But in a court of law, with his life on the line, he said that Trippie was a member during the trial. This really outraged everyone and anyone in hip-hop. BB, Harv, and he said that rappers Cardi B, followed behind bars, go to trial. or he could completely tarnish his reputation in hip-hop forever and cooperate with the federal government. He chose the latter option. Tekashi would testify against 9 train members, Nuke, Harv, and he said that rappers Cardi B, Casanova, Jim Jones, and Chief Keef were all of them. On his Instagram talk with Trippie last year, he claimed that Trippie was not a real blood. But in a court of law, with his life on the line, he said that Trippie was a victim during the trial. The snitching outraged everyone and anyone in hip hop. Meek Mill, Snoop Dogg, 50 Cent were just some of the names disgusted by his cooperation. The street cred he cultivated throughout his career and now vanished into thin air. During this time, the hip-hop world would be led to question just how real the beef between Trippie and Tekashi was. In December 2019, a reporter, Anthony Nelson, claimed that the entire Tekashi and Trippie beef was fake. He released a Fortnite office in 2020 was like that. Tekashi, she was simply trolling for a video. It was a skit, and her brother reported it. While there could have been a publicity stunt element to this, it's more important the optics. If people thought that he slept with 6ix9ine, you might as well have done it. It does the same damage to Trippie Redd. There are some incidents that point towards it not being fake. Tekashi did make fun of Trippie's dead brother, something which would definitely cross the line if this was staged. Tekashi also testified that he ordered his entourage to beat up Trippie at his hotel in New York on that night in 2018. The beef between the two does seem genuine, but there definitely seems to have been some theatrics at play too, perhaps definitely in the beginning. But with Tekashi becoming a free man once again, the beef was brought back to what hip-hop beef should be all about, the music. In September 2020, Tekashi released his album Tattletales, which was expected to pull in 150K in its first week. In reality, it sold 56K total album equivalent. Meanwhile, in November, Trippie Redd's album Pegasus achieved 60K in its first week. For the first time since 2017, both artists were once again back on a level playing field. Since then, Trippie has released even more successful albums and singles, but we're still waiting for another project by Tekashi. Since getting out of jail, Tekashi has continued to grab attention through social media and memes, but it's a lot more desperate now. There's no music to go along with it. But there's only so far you can get with all of it. In contrast, Trippie Redd seemed to want to become a better musician, artist, and to fall back from a lot of the answers. His sound has continued to evolve, and he moved on from his emo rap. At a certain point in time, he had billionaire, husband to Beyonce, married. He was a rapper looking for a record deal, like most of his peers in the 90s. Dame Dash put up money to record songs, and when the record deal was not forthcoming, he began pressing the discs himself and selling them out of his car, and Rockefeller Records was born. To try to get on the radio, Dame Dash shot a video for Jay-Z's song In My Lifetime for $16,000 on 16mm film, borrowed a friend's boat in St. Thomas to film a scene of what looked like playboys living the high life. After appearing on records with his hometown Brooklyn predecessors Jaz-O and Big Daddy Kane, releasing the debut solo single of My Lifetime, it was no time to baby. Instead of giving up after hearing the word no way too often from records, he struck the ball wrong by starting his very own Rockefeller Records. Did he explain what his early years career was? Every single record label that was like, this guy is terrible. I had to put Reasonable Doubt out myself because nobody would sign it. I would press up singles and go to the record stores myself, collect $100, $200, come back, give them some more records. It started like that. It made me appreciate it so much more. No one gave me anything. They just gave me a record. I really just took my time and grew it step by step by step by step. I could have easily been like, what I'm talking about ain't right. Nobody wants to sign me. That would have stopped the suffer. But I didn't. Named after John D. Rockefeller, one of the wealthiest Americans to ever live, Rockefeller Records as a brand embodied the image of opulent wealth and lavish luxury to the fullest. From their champagne bottle logo to their audio salutes to Versace and Cristal. Being that Jay-Z's first guest appearance on an album was with musical mentor Jaz-O, who was also a neighbor when they were both living in the Marcy Projects housing complex in Brooklyn during the 80s, was he ever asked to be partners on it?
It was never talked about, but one thing I can say, I had opportunities to that, and I say it now, like I've said it for over 30 years, or at least 30 years. I didn't want him to go through some of the rigors that I had to go through to get to a certain point.
The Rock, as the record label began to refer to themselves as, put out Jay's debut album Reasonable Doubt with distribution through Priority Records on June 25th, 1996. We did a video on Priority Records and Live, and you can check it out in the description below. Although Reasonable Doubt would take time from the blockbuster that later became, it's still tore up the summer with street anthems and now pop classics such as Dead Presidents, Time to Hustle, Mary Live, and also the Finest, Duet, Notorious B.I.G. Production by the likes of Premier, Gotti, Stevie, Clark Kent, and Jazzo, and career-building appearances from Foxy Brown, Memphis Bleak, and Sauce Money. Reasonable Doubt left no doubt in the minds of the music industry that Jay didn't come to play, he came to make a mark. The monumental debut album sold 43,000 copies during week 1, and almost 10 times that amount in its first year of release. It was a slow burn. The success that it experienced helped Rockefeller and step it up with partnership with Def Jam. Jay-Z's carefree, cool, rapid wit, and effortless depictions of street life upped the ante on rap music's fascination with the imagery that Cool D Rap ushered back in the 80s. It was magnified and cemented a year earlier in 95 with Raekwon's Only Built for Cuban Links, and also AZ's Do or Die. It continued onwards with Nas's It Was Written, and later in 97, Notorious B.I.G's Life After Death. Reasonable Doubt put Jay-Z directly in the same conversation as these genuine New York City hip-hop kings, like Biggie, Nas, AZ, Raekwon, Ghostface Killah, and also the members of Wu-Tang Clan and Mobb Deep. The main difference was that Jay-Z entered this New York City hip-hop kingdom not just as a top-tier lyricist, but also as a co-owner of his own record label. But Jay also proved that he was much more than one-third owner of Rockefeller. He was also the premier all-star player on that team as they entered into the league of rap music and the music industry. Competition was fierce at that time, with P. Diddy's Bad Boy Records' stacked roster rolling out Notorious B.I.G., Mace, and the trio The Lox. Over on the West Coast, Rockefeller also had to hold up their weight with Death Row Records, which were taking over acts like Snoop Dogg, The Dog Pound. Although it took 6 years for Jay-Z's Reasonable Doubt to get to platinum selling status in 2002, it didn't stop the Rockefeller hit from topping the music charts consistently. Excluding the low-selling attempt at R&B, Chris Jones, their only album on the Rock called Rock, and rapper Akil, who was the short-lived Lady Rock, it was mostly a road paved with gold and platinum flags for the Office partners, Jay and Chase. Even with Jay-Z expressing an early interest in staying behind the scenes on the business side, it was mostly Jay-Z's annual look at Jay-Z's album sales from the second album in My Lifetime Volume 1 all the way down to the Black Album, the project that was promoted as supposedly being his retirement album. So you had In My Lifetime Volume 1, a year after his debut, it's been platinum. Volume 2, 5 times platinum. Volume 3, 3 times platinum. The Dynasty, Rock La Familia, the group album, 2 times platinum. The Blueprint in 2001, 2 times platinum. Album number 7 was a joint duet project with R. Kelly called The Best of Both Worlds. It was platinum, 2002. The Blueprint 2, 3 times platinum. The Black Album, 3 times platinum. To make a long story short, between 96 and 2003, which was Rockefeller's pre-Kanye West era release albums, Jay had 9 albums, all selling 1 million copies or better. Out of all the other signees to the label, there was only one other platinum selling album, and that was Come Home With Me by Cameron. Then there were 5 that went gold, and that was Coming of Age by Memphis Bleak in 99, The Truth by Beanie Siegel in 2000, Understanding by Memphis Bleak in 2000, The Reason by Beanie Siegel in 2001, and Diplomatic Immunity Classic Album by the Diplomats in 2003. So in all honesty, Jay-Z's Volume 2 Hard Knock Life album alone outsold all of his other artists' albums combined in 1996 and 2003. This, of course, is before Kanye West changed the game a year later after Jay-Z's The Black Album in 2004 with The College Dropout, which has sold over 4 million copies and re-energized the whole label and industry as a whole. Prior to Ye's transition from being a hired producer to an artist on the mic, clearly the pressure was on Jay-Z's mind to keep rapping every year to ensure that The Rock remained the biggest on the block. But Jay-Z obviously had other ideas of what success looked like to him. He wasn't looking to remain attached at the hip with Dame Dash and Lady Bird. But what else transpired that finally pushed apart the Rockefeller Records camp and turned it inside out? When it comes to the internal drama brewing at the Story label, video producer Choke No Joke, who was hired at The Rock by Dame Dash, had a bird's eye view of the corporate crumbling that was taking place from the inside.
I was working at Rockefeller for 4 years. Jay-Z never came to the office once. Now 4 years. So from the Blueprint 2 all the way up to the Black Album, he has never been on. I do see him go to New York, but he has never come into the Rockefeller office.
The unraveling of the bond between Jay and Dame stems from several loose threads. First off, there was more than one way that Rockefeller was managed. Dame was apparently more accessible to artists on the label, along with being highly outspoken, you could say. Jay-Z was more distant and in artist mode a lot of the time, which makes sense because we already established that Jay was the main breadwinner for the company. But the loud flamboyance of Dame Dash wasn't always the way that the more laid-back Jay-Z wanted to run the company. Rockefeller Soldier and hiring rapper Beanie Single, who respected hardcore rappers who also had a whole hometown crew behind them called State Property, also signed to the label. Besides Beanie, State Property consisted of Freeway, Petey Crack, Young Chris, Beef Buck, Emilio Sparks, and Oshino Vasqueza. With that being said, Beanie had front row seat for the collapse of the company that was unfolding all around him, and he shared it publicly while sitting down with Global Grind TV.
What I do, is some conversations that me and Jay had. Dame was started being famous.
Bro, you think it's been MK Ultra beyond belief, bro? The fuck? Or they just fucking high, bro. What the fuck?
You know, you liable to say anything.
You weren't biased too, dude.
I think if Dame would have played the role as Kareem first did, Kareem had just played the background and just handled the business correctly, maybe Rockefeller still would be, the force that he was. And then, but on the second hand, I think Jay was growing. And, in my eyes, at a certain point in time, I just think he felt, it's time for me to go and do my own thing. We made enough money together. Dame was spending a lot of company money, going on a lot of trips and going into a lot of other business.
Yeah, who does that sound like, bro?
Peter, Big Paul, and take the money from out of here and trying to build other brands and stuff without consulting with his partners.
Beanie Siegel, while incarcerated, released his album Becoming under Dame Dash Music. In contrast, State Property group members joined Jay-Z on the Def Jam on Rockefeller Records. Beanie Siegel responded by putting State Property projects on hold, claiming he was disappointed by his label mates. Beanie Siegel was constantly in trouble, which worried Rockefeller and Def Jam executives. Aside from legal trouble, he was waging an all-out war against Jadakiss and the Logs, trying to make a name for himself. In 2010, Beans laid out his point in a recent interview with Star and Buck Wild. I ain't loyal to Dame, he said when asked about his time with Rockefeller Records. My lawyer found about $11 million that Dame and Dash stole from him. I mean, he filed bankruptcy. I have a piece of paper that says he owes me some money. But who wants to go through that? I haven't seen or talked to Dame in roughly 5 years. Aside from Jay-Z and Kanye West, the domination of Rockefeller Records over the rap world during their run also stood upon the extension of their operations. Cameron and his diplomats, establish state property, Cameron would later introduce the diplomats. The recruitment of these artists and record labels helped lead Rockefeller Records to its prime, but that pricey controversy between Jay-Z and Cameron began over the H to the Izzo beat, and Cameron discarding Jay-Z's verse from the original Old Boy track. Dame Dash poured gasoline on the flame by offering Cameron the vice president position of Rockefeller Records without Jay-Z's knowledge. Cameron years later expressed his position, claiming Jay-Z blocked him from the executive position. On the other hand, he also stated that executives were trying to lowball him with a $500,000 salary. Rockefeller Records renewed their Def Jam contracts for a reported $20 million in 2004, which was a massive $19.5 million increase from their original 1997 deal. Dame's remarks to MTV affirmed that he couldn't envision a life without Rockefeller. At the time, Dame felt secure in their collective position in the music industry. All that is paperwork. We'll never break up. It's Rockefeller for life. I would never pass the torch or leave any of my artists. I look at them like my family, almost like my children. I would never leave them with anybody else. Who else could run Rockefeller but me? But this might have been Dame's way of keeping the sticky behind-the-scenes business quiet and out of the prying public eye. Because within 6 months, Jay-Z chose to take on the role of Def Jam president after the remaining 50% stake of Rockefeller Records was sold to their parent company. This wasn't a sudden move, because the tension had been brewing between Dame and Jay for years. For instance, in 2002, during Jay's vacation in the Mediterranean islands, a little bit of corporate restructuring was taking place behind his back, with Dame putting on a media event to appoint Dipset's Cameron and state property leader as new vice presidents of Rockefeller, with Jay-Z sending out the long-distance message that refuted these hirings as not being official, and in his words, a little premature. This surely put a divide between Jay-Z and the newer acts on the label. Then there was the viral video of Dame Dash exploding on Def Jam executives after barging into a meeting about Rockefeller that he wasn't called about. As another clue that it wasn't all shiny in the Rockefeller empire, Dame Dash produced a satirical comedy movie called Death of a Dynasty that actually incorporated the rumors surrounding the tension under their roof and would later actually end their dynasty for real. The first no-turning-back steps that moved towards the end of Rockefeller Records came in 2004, when Def Jam Recordings, which had owned a 50% stake in Rockefeller since '97, bought out the rest of the label, and Jay-Z made an agreement with them to become the president of Def Jam as well. Then in the fall of 2005, Jay-Z bought out Dame Dash's share of Rockefeller, not closing on the day after breaking. And in 2006, the both albums sided with Jay-Z career-wise. He depicted the night on December 2004 Def Jam offered he was looking to accept, and how Rockefeller artists mostly underperformed after Dash was no longer in the picture. I said, go ahead and take the money and the job, but don't take the name. Don't take Rockefeller with you. I didn't say please, but I might as well have, he said. It's business, but we were always supposed to be about more than business. Jay especially. I did everything I possibly could so that he didn't have to raise his voice. He just had to whisper something in my ear, and I'd take care of it. The people I fought with to make money for him, Leor Cohen and Kevin Lyles, executives at Def Jam, he's made friends with. He hangs out with Puff now. It's like if your brother leaves you. Kanye's second record did fine, but no more than his first, and he had a lot more muscle behind it by that time. Memphis Bleak ain't what it was. Young Gunn sold about a quarter of the number of records than the new albums that were last year. I always recall. They told that Jay-Z was getting away from the rock by Def Jam executives that he viewed as culture vultures, namely their president Leor Cohen. It was like they have people that their job is to create people so that they can monetize it, pause. And they can't make any money or get any respect from their culture. That's why they're an artist. Because the minute that they're allowed to be never had a beef with Jay, always with Leor and his whole crew. He's the one that ruined Rockefeller. At the time that the rock was going downhill, Jay-Z made his position known without openly hurling any disparaging remarks towards his former partner in the press. Jay-Z explained his situation by saying, however, the situation happened. Whether we outgrew the situation or what have you, it was time for me to seek a new deal in the situation. While I was doing that, I was going to leave Rockefeller Records. If anybody can imagine the main driving force for that, and then having to leave all your legacy
legacy and everything behind, I felt that it was successful. While I was seeking out another deal, whether it was the Esparta Records or what have you, there was a deal on the table to be the president of Def Jam, continue running Rockefeller, CEO, president of Rockefeller also, and I was the one that wanted to leave. I was like, we kind of figure out something we're at. So I said, yeah, there's no doubt. It's not money. There's no doubt. If you look at it, it sells whatever it sells in the catalog, maybe 100,000 a year. It's very little money, but it meant everything to me. It was my baby. It was my first one. And it was also more of a principle thing. Just give me something to walk, something to hold on to. I don't want to walk away from myself. You can imagine that with nothing. So I was like, let me get reasonably out, and I'll give up the rest of my masters. Just give me my baby to hold on to, so 10 years down the line, I can look back and I got something. I'm not at the end. And I was the one being offered everything. I thought it was more than fair. And when that was turned down, I had to make a choice. I'll leave that for them to say what choice they would make. That's about it. I don't really want to talk about Dave or Biggs. I don't have nothing negative to say about it. Kanye West may be one of the loudest voices in rap music right now, but back in 2004 when Ye was dropping his first album, College Dropout, Rockefeller was getting ready to drop their remaining 50% to their parent company, the Island Def Jam Music. According to the Def Jam getting to keep many of the Rockefeller's names like Siegel, and of course, Kanye West. With Jay-Z still running the show. Oddly enough, Jay-Z was the one that wasn't too keen on having Kanye become a rapper in the first place, especially during an era where more hardcore acts like Beanie Siegel and 50 Cent dominated rap at the time. Rockefeller's co-founder Kareem Biggs Burke shared his feelings on the departure of Kanye when he went on to work with Jay-Z. There was an opportunity where we could have taken Kanye to another label, and we would have still been in the Kanye business for several years after that. We decided to leave him on Def Jam. That's one thing that I wish I were better prepared for, especially seeing how big he's become in launching his career from where it all started. Kanye is a very creative person, but at the same time, we would have probably been able to help him with other business outside of music. Those are the things that I usually concentrate on. Even early on, I was able to block all those other opportunities. I don't have a career artist for you. I try to help them do things outside of music. It's always a family atmosphere, which I love, but I also enjoy seeing them be successful on the business and pleasure by day and day with women. But in real life behind the doors, there are people in particular that said to me, Rockefeller Records. First off was Leah, the young R&B star that R. Kelly was married to. Speaking of R. Kelly, Dave Dash stated that he wasn't too happy about taking his entire album on Rockefeller in 2002 with the since disgraced singer who on September 27, 2022. Dave's opinion was, if you remember the last of both worlds, you don't see my name on that. I never wanted no part of that. I know I'm not messing with that. I knew, morally, we weren't the same, referring to Jay. So to me, Rockefeller was defunct. It was over. I couldn't mess with it. It was something that, to me, I don't want to say unforgivable, but I couldn't understand it. New York City's Hot 97 DJ Funkmaster Flex had spoken up on Instagram to shame Dave for moving in on Aaliyah after she had been linked to Jay-Z first. That was Jay-Z lady first. Dame did a snake move. Tell me I'm lying, you piece of shit. That's why the rock crumbled. You was touching Jay-Z chick. Remember the house in the Hamptons? Choke no joke, the videographer who captured the footage of Dame Dash's famous profanity-filled screaming during a marketing meeting for Jay that Dame wasn't invited to, has made the suggestion that Dame Dash tried to not only take Aaliyah from Jay, but also Beyonce at one point. According to Choke No Joke, I mean, nothing happened, like he kissed or sexed her or something like that. Did he try to holler at her? Yeah, that's the same thing he did with Aaliyah. Aaliyah fell for it. Beyonce wasn't going to violate Jay like that. We all knew there was a point at Rockefeller where Dame wasn't allowed around Beyonce. Everybody that worked there at that time knew, because he was a creep. Dame went behind his back and hollered at Aaliyah just like he did with Beyonce. But like I said, Beyonce wasn't going for that stuff. And the only reason reason why Aaliyah might have gone for it was because he wouldn't be public with her and try to keep that stuff private. After the time of Aaliyah's death that took place on August 25, 2001 due to a plane crash in the Bahamas, Dame Dash had confirmed that marriage could have been in the cards for the two. She was the best person I ever knew. I never met a person like her in my life. Every day that we were together, we cherished. Every memory. Every day was a special event. Whether it was going to a store or going to a movie or just sitting in a house, wherever we were was like our own little party, in our own little world. She was the only girl that got to hang out with my homeboys on the level of a homeboy. It was like being able to be with your homeboy and your girl at the same time. We just genuinely had a lot of fun together. We were definitely going to be married. As soon as she had time, we were getting married. Like after The Matrix. She was the one. She was definitely the one for me. It wasn't an official proposal. We had just talked about it, you know. She would just carry herself like such a normal individual. We just would pop into McDonald's or Wendy's or something, and people just wouldn't believe it. After Jay-Z sailed off into the sunset as his own business entity, his ex-partners Dame and Biggs established their own record label, the Dame Dash Music Group. After every Rockefeller artist had their pick of either going with Jay or staying with Dame and Biggs, it was the Harlem home team of Cameron and the Diplomats that worked with Dame Dash Music Group. Cam publicly songs and interviews with the full support of Dame. Imagine how awkward that rivalry must have been, considering the Dame Dash Music Group was still distributed by Def Jam for a while, the company Jay-Z had become the president of. Then, years later, on May 21st, 2009, Jay-Z bought back his own recording contract and record label from Def Jam Recordings for $5 million and would resign from his position as CEO of Def Jam Records sometime after that. Roc Nation, the new version of Rockefeller that Jay created in 2008, brokered a dynamic $150 million distribution deal with the concert company Live Nation. But as we all know, Jay-Z went on to really live his lyrics when he once rhymed, "I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman," as he entered the Billionaire Boys Club, which he now accompanies a couple of other massive acts, one of them being Kanye West, another being Puff. But let me know what y'all think in the comments. Subscribe. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Thanks for watching. Peace.
What's poppin', y'all? Today we're going to look at and cover one of the most legendary hip-hop labels of all time. I mean, just how huge is Def Jam Records in the history of the hip-hop music industry? Can you think of another record label who even has past presidents that are famous? Probably not. Leor Cohen was the first Def Jam from 1988 to 1998, and Leor was followed by Kevin Liles in 1998 to 2004, which was the year that none other than Jay-Z took over, until 2007. Then music industry icon L.A. Reid moved into the Def Jam office from 2007 to 2012, and even Eminem's manager, who helped Eminem form Shady Records, stepped into Def Jam president position between 2018 and 2020. Next question: how many hip-hop labels can really claim to create a high-selling fighting video game when you get to pick from DMX, Ghostface Killah, Method Man, Redman, Nori, Capone, Joe Budden, Scarface, Ludacris, WC, and DJ Funkmaster Flex? All of these artists were all signed to Def Jam around the time that the legendary video game, if you were a kid at the time, Def Jam Vendetta was released in 2003. If it wasn't for Def Jam in the 80s and the 90s, we would have never had the hip-hop icons that have inspired millions, from people like LL Cool J, Slick Rick, Redman, and Foxy Brown, to major groups like Public Enemy, Beastie Boys, and Onyx. But unfortunately, as history has unfolded from its origin in 1984, it's also unraveled in more recent years with a plethora of performers that want to head in the opposite direction and get themselves as far away from this historic record label. The artist complaints have stacked up over and over again. Look at the results, with some of their past rosters using exit strategies as proclaimed dropping their final album in favor of fatherhood, to retiring from rapping altogether and becoming the one that interviews rappers instead of making the albums that get publicized. So let's take a look at the historic birth of this milestone in rap music, the presumed death of Def Jam Records, which is what it seems like right now, and why I believe this to be the case. Before we get into all the drama, let's just take a moment to celebrate the come-up of this monumental hip-hop brand, more than just a label. After listening to It's Yours by T. La Rock, Russell Simmons, who was already really recognized in the New York hip-hop scene, joined forces with Rick Rubin at Def Jam. The two collected demo tapes from up-and-coming rappers to build up the collection of artists that they would launch into the music marketplace. Rick Rubin explained how he first met Russell Simmons, who was already the go-to guy to book New York City rappers in the 80s for shows. Russell and I met at a party for a TV show called Graffiti Rock. It was a pilot episode, and Run DMC appeared on it, and the Treacherous 3 appeared on it, and it was in a loft somewhere on the west side in the teens. But I remember being really excited when I met him because, as a fan of hip-hop, he had already, his name on a lot of the rap records that already came out. Curtis Blow, Run DMC, so I was excited to meet him. And when I met Russell, it turns out that It's Yours was his favorite record, which was a surprise to me. And he was really surprised when he met me because he didn't picture me as I was, based on what the record sounded like. Russell was 5 years older than me, and he was already established in the music business, and I had no experience whatsoever. So even then, he was the face of hip-hop. Even before Def Jam, he was the face of hip-hop. It's true. In 1984, the same year that Def Jam got off the ground with both Russell Simmons and Rick Rubin behind it, the label earned their first hit song thanks to LL Cool J's I Need a Beat, a single that quickly sold an astonishing 100,000 copies on the brand new independent rap label. What originally drove the creation of Def Jam in the first place was the desire of Russell and Rick to prove that hip-hop music in the 80s wasn't just some sort of temporary fad, and that they could fill this niche that the mainstream record labels were missing out on and totally ignoring. But those major labels definitely began to take notice when LL Cool J, who was only 17 years old, released his debut album in 1985, and it sold gold in its first 5 months of release. That's 500,000 copies. Speaking of youth, when Def Jam was founded in 1984, Rick Rubin was a 21-year-old NYU art school student from Long Island, whose music was getting... Queen's native Russell Simmons was only 27 years old, and has expressed how entering his business with Rick Rubin's Def Jam made more sense than to start his own record label. He had a drum machine full of hot joints. I mean, his whole DMX machine was full of hit records, from what I could hear. He was a smart kid. He was part of a band called the Beastie Boys, who I met later. They were phenomenal. He was a great producer. He had produced that record, It's Yours, by T. La Rock, and after he produced that record, he started receiving tapes. And one of the tapes was LL Cool J's I Need a Beat. He remixed it or redid it, and it became our first release for Def Jam Records. The more I got to know Rick, the more I felt that my efforts should go into the partnership and not into a separate company. Because I already had Run DMC and Houdini and Jimmy Spice, and Curtis Blow, and the Fearless Four. I was managing a lot of acts, and I was ready then. And I had produced a few acts that were successful, including Run DMC. But then I saw Rick wanted to start a record company as an independent distribution deal, and it made sense. I was money. Now, rap your mind around the fact that these little rap labels, a rare thing in the mid-80s, went from getting started in 1984 having a gold-selling album and a movie with Warner Brothers in 1995 called Crush It. That was about the early days of Def Jam. Actor Blair Underwood, in his very first movie, was playing a character inspired by Russell Simmons himself. Technically, Def Jam was still in its early days, and it already had a popular movie based on these facts. The movie soundtrack was Cool Day, Beastie Boys, and even famous singers like Shaka Khan and Debbie Harry. From this point forward, the success of Def Jam Records exploded. In 1986, with Columbia Records on board for mass distribution of Def Jam products, wildly entertained by rappers known as the Beastie Boys put out their debut album, License to Ill. They didn't just make a record, they sold records too. License to Ill became the first rap album to ever hit the top of the Billboard album chart, along with becoming one of Columbia Records' fastest-selling debut records. It clearly didn't stop selling over the course of time either, because roughly 30 years after its release, It became certified diamond by the RIAA in 2015, with over 10 million copies sold. Def Jam ended the 80s with more blockbuster albums from LL Cool J, Public Enemy, Slick Rick, and Third Base. In the 90s and 2000s, the roster was expanded to Nice and Smooth, Redman, Onyx, Method Man, Warren G, and a host of smaller labels that pushed out albums from giants like Jay-Z, DMX, Ja Rule, Kanye West, Foxy Brown, and Ludacris. But with all that said, what happened with the rappers that have had issues during their time at Def Jam Records? First up to bat is Joe Budden. Yes, Budden was not always a popular podcaster, really one of the biggest voices in hip-hop media. When he was releasing music and making a name for himself with his hit song Pump It Up, say One Hit Wonder, Joe Budden was signed to Def Jam Records.
And that is the key these days is with all the music in your library, if I can say to you, you like Jack Johnson, you like this person that you love, and you absolutely fall in love with that artist, that the company that can actually do that, you know, in a great format will win, because there's nothing better than discovering new music that you love.
What's poppin', y'all? Welcome to the Industry Plant Document. And in this video, we're going to be covering how industry plants are built, manufactured, funded, and then ultimately distributed to the masses. Some of you may be asking the question, what is an industry plant? And the definition is an artist that is able to appear as independent and have an organic come up and fan base, but has really been funded the entire time and or secretly signed to a record label. When we dive deeper into this topic, the definition definitely needs to be expanded to not just signed to record labels, because some artists are signed to other entities that operate in the same capacity, if not more powerful. It is deception and screams inauthenticity, especially if you're an artist yourself and recognize that there's no way someone comes out of the gate with a polished sound, look, and appeal without making several iterations while growing a fan base over an extended period of time. The moment when the term industry plant really went from a handful of people who closely followed music using it to a really big thing was the rapper named Rory. Rory was an individual who came into the music industry around 2014, but the way he came in was so fishy it had red flags all over it. Before he had ever released a project, his song God's Whisper was already on the soundtrack to the movie Lucy. He had co-signs from Jaden Smith, Mac Miller, Khalifa, and Kanye West, all without even having 10,000 followers on Twitter by the time the project Indigo Child released. From there, it's like everything accelerated. He was on the radio, he got all these interviews, he had a Billboard write-up in March of 2014, where he premiered his first song, God's Whisper. It was announced much later that he signed to Columbia, but when people uncovered pictures from his old Instagram, he was at Sony offices a long time before that. And the fact he was signed was hidden to make an organic come up, which we'll dive into later. I know you've probably asked yourself the question, where did this artist come from and why am I seeing them everywhere? At least once in the past couple of years. And we're going to explore the entire system in place to push out these industry plants. In this video, we'll cover many different artists and mainly the systems in place, but better to start with the global superstar who has had a very dark cloud about her come-up story, Billie Eilish. Personally, did not think she was an industry plant for a long time because she was a signed artist. Nobody I have that, so it seemed like decided to push this young artist they had, and it ended up working phenomenally well. There was no deception there, but there is a lot that happened with Billie Eilish before she was signed that made me reconsider. Let's go over how Billie Eilish initially blew up or got on people's radar, and for that I'll be referencing the YouTuber by the name of Progress video on accusing her of being an industry plant. I'll have his channel and video linked in the description. You should definitely check it out.
A lot of people who know Billie Billy's music obviously know that the song that blew her up was Ocean Eyes, but I have a feeling a very small amount of people actually know how Ocean Eyes came to be. What I found was, a complicated mess, I guess I'd say. Billy explains how Ocean Eyes came to be in two completely different ways between two separate interviews. In her interview with Vogue magazine, she says this: "Last year, one of my teachers asked if I would either write a song or have my brother write a song to choreograph a dance to. And I was like, yes, that's such a cool thing to do. Then my brother came to me with Ocean Eyes, which he had originally written for his band. He told me he thought it would sound really good in my voice. He taught me the song, and we sang it together along with the and I loved it. It was stuck in my head for weeks. We kind of just decided that that was the song we were going to use for the dance." But in her interview with Interview magazine, she said this: "It was weird for us to do anything else. The reason we put it out when we did was that the whole song was meant for my dance teacher, because he wanted to do it for a dance. That's why the production is dance-esque, contemporary, and lyrical. And then it was done. We didn't wait until Friday to put it out. And thought, screw it, let's put it out." No one wanted to claim that Ocean Eyes was a pre-made song by her brother, and that the production was already completed to be able to do a dance to for her dance teacher. But in another interview, she claims that the song was basically made specifically for the dance, and that all of the production was to go for the dance. Very different replies, in my opinion.
I don't personally chalk that up as a lie by Billy, and I will never call her or her brother liars when it comes to this video, because all the research that I've done, they haven't really lied yet, unless you consider a mission line, which I do not. But we know this all starts with this one song, Ocean Eyes, that her brother wrote for her, so that's where our journey begins. A good example of a narrative that is driven by media and Billie Eilish's team, her come-up story, is this excerpt from a article titled "Meet Billie Eilish, Pop's Terrifying 15-year-old Prodigy." Eilish and Phineas spent a week recording the song. We just sat in his room dancing to it, she recalled, and uploaded it to SoundCloud simply to have a shareable link for Eilish's dance teacher. Then we picked it up, voicing support, and the track went viral. After a day, it had 1,000 plays, and we were like, "We made it," she said. "We didn't think it would go past that. We literally just thought it was because my popular friend reposted it." Isn't it incredible how quickly everything goes up? But even they said they weren't sure it would get more than 1,000 plays because their popular friend reposted it. And I don't know about you, but I don't think a blog picking something up will lead to suddenly getting the support of Beast One, Zane Lowe. But in this small paragraph, a lot of material we have to dig into, starting with before Ocean Eyes, and any label or industry connections Billie or her brother Phineas may have had. Billie Eilish and Phineas managers during the release of Ocean Eyes, and still to this day, are Brandon Goodman and Daniel Rubenson of Best Friends Music. You can see both are still on the roster on their webpage. This is just a funny coincidence if you decide to look at it like that, but Danny Rubenson was a musician who was signed to Fueled by Ramen, that was a record label, who moved on and has been the chairman and CEO of Interscope Records since 2014. The record label that Billie Eilish is currently signed to. He said so himself in an interview on Polestar. Perhaps the most important thing I found in my research is that Danny played trombone in the Hippos. Oh boy, that's true. We were the first release on Fueled by Ramen, which was owned and run by John Danik, who is now chairman and CEO of Interscope. And then, in addition, we signed to Interscope a couple of years later, well before John's tenure. But it's just kind of a fun circular moment for me personally. How does Danny Rubenson even get into contact with Billie Eilish and her brother Phineas? Well, in an interview with they asked, first things first, how did you start working with Billie Eilish? Billie writes everything with her brother, Phineas O'Connell. Years ago, he reached out to me about working with a producer client of mine. He sent me a very funny, sort of cavalier email. It caught my attention as it said, "Eric Mother Effin' Palm Quiz," which was hard to ignore. I listened to the music that he was writing and producing, and I thought it, especially at 17 or 16. I connected him with my client, and they ended up working together on 4 songs. Over time, Phineas and I became friends, and I guided him a little bit with what he was doing with his band. A local kind of rock. And then when he kicked off what he was doing with his sister, the music he was making perked up my ears. Ocean
Eyes drove all of us to take notice. The next day I was with Phineas and his family, with Billy, meeting everybody, talking about what they wanted to do. The song had already crossed into viral territory overnight. We discussed whether or not this was something Billy was really interested in doing, or just a hobby. And we got to know and understand Billy. It was still early stages, but she had a vision of how she wanted what she was going to do to be put out into the world. Okay, so far this doesn't seem too bizarre. The band that Phineas had was called the Slightlies. And it's not like he reached out to some fast and in the case of Baby Keem, who said he randomly sent a beat pack to TDE and decided to put it on the Black Panther soundtrack. This wasn't an instant relationship, as Phineas was working with this producer, Eric Fox, who's still signed to Best Friend Music, as you can see on the writer producer section of their webpage. How were you able to segue from Phineas asking for a producer to managing him and Billy? It was a year in the process. He reached out, I connected him with my producer, Brian. We worked on an EP together, and it took time for him. Then he'd ask my advice on how to release it, who to release it through, what new media outlet to release music with. He didn't have much guidance in the industry, so I helped him along the way. I wasn't doing it because I wanted to manage him. It was just because I saw a very talented kid who had something great going on, and I wanted to help him. Obviously, because my producer worked on it, I felt it was the responsible thing to do as well. The moment where things start getting confusing and we get conflicting stories is when Ocean Eyes happens. What they say in the Music Business Worldwide article is, Phineas had, obviously enough, also been writing songs with his sister Billie Eilish, including debut track Ocean Eyes, which in 2016. Ocean Eyes drove all of us to take notice, remember Roots. The next day I was with Phineas and his family and with Billy, meeting everybody and talking about what they wanted to do. The song had already crossed into viral territory overnight. This song was released in 2015 though, and if you remember in the W Magazine quote, it said that the blog Hilly Dilly picked it up and the next day it had 1,000 plays. So this all happened in 2015, not 2016. Now, what the hell is Hilly Dilly? Well, it is now defunct, but it was a music discovery blog. In an interview with Elevator Mag, founder says, "It's a really simple idea," says Hillard, "a place to share music with friends." Hilly Dilly was founded in 2007, and 6 years later, Hillard was approached by someone wanting to rebuild the site, and would then become the lead developer of Hilly Dilly, David Sterling. This update allocated for more editorial work, and playlists personally curated by Hillard. The partnership worked well at the beginning, because it was important to both of them that there were no advertising on the site. Hillard said that Hilly Dilly was never about generating clicks, or sharing a song just because it was put out by a famous artist. Just, here's a dope song, take it or leave it. We don't care about our stats, we don't care if you come back. It's just people sharing great songs. The site had traffic but never really made any money. They tried to start a record label in 2016, but it shut down within a year. And by April 2020, the entire site was shut down. The site was responsible for finding artists like Daniel Caesar, Lorde, Halsey, and Billie Eilish. Since the site is dead, you can't go to the link for the initial Eilish post, but I was able to get a screen capture for it, and this is what it looked like. The article was published sometime after the second week of November. Time and time again, we mean it when we say that one track is all it takes for a career to be set, almost like they knew. For Billie Eilish, a singer-songwriter from Los Angeles, she's not just one track evidencing our claim, though, but two. Sure, they're not instant radio hits, but how pure and unadulterated they sound will really take people by storm. On Ocean Eyes and Fingers Crossed, tracks, the songwriter has the most pristine vocal vocals you ever may hear. This is especially the case on Ocean Eyes. She's only a total of 3 tracks to her name thus far, but the talent she's showing here on these 2 is obvious. And there's no doubt in our minds that once the word gets out about her, she'll be swept up. There is absolutely no way Danny Rukeson, who was close to Phineas, had no idea this song dropped until 2016. There's a totally separate article that gives some criticism to the blow-up of Billie Eilish, as well as the blog Hilly Dilly, and the writer says, "What's never remarked upon in the Billie Eilish origin story is the blog Hilly Dilly." Here is Eilish's first post. This is the post I showed just now. In Certainly a number of others are written by kids underpaid by record labels to be cheap A&Rs with little disclosure of their major label connections. Instead of blogs existing as they did in the 2000s, mostly independent outlets where people posted songs they liked, Hilly Dilly simply was a proxy for Interscope's marketing efforts. I harp on this because when the song was released, Eilish was already more connected to the music industry than many artists will ever be in their entire lives. This is a good point made, but it was the owner of the site, Chad Hillard, who wrote the article about Billie Eilish, and he currently does not work for Interscope, nor do I think he's ever officially worked for them. But funny enough, someone from Interscope just happened to see that blog post. In an interview with Darkroom's CEO and manager, record label Darkroom is partnered with Interscope. The article says, he found Billie after she uploaded the song to SoundCloud, Ocean Eyes, which was picked up by blog Billie. An Interscope intern also wrote for the blog, showed it to A&R player Nick Groff, who shared it with Loopline, who then met with Billie's management team. I think that Ocean Eyes only had a few thousand plays. He said within 1 second of hearing it and seeing her photo, it just clicked. My radar went off. I felt like this was the artist that I've been searching for my entire career. I was going to make sure I did everything possible to work with her. This gives credence to the point that these labels have cheap interns that are supposedly at these blogs doing music discovery, because there are too many individuals from Interscope surrounding Billie Eilish before Ocean Eyes even takes off for it to be a mere coincidence. And this is all still in 2015. There isn't enough proof to say that Interscope used this blog as a proxy to just make it seem like an organic rise for her song, but it is enough to start asking questions. And we need to take a deeper look at the CEO of Darkroom and her manager, Justin Lubliner. Justin Lubliner put up a picture on Instagram with Eilish on August 30th, 2016, caption, Billie Eilish is nothing short of amazing. She's captivating, beautiful, and a phenomenal songwriter. I'm so incredibly excited that last night she signed to Darkroom/Interscope Records, and I finally get to work with her in a awesome team. Oh, and she's only 14. So this guy found out about Ocean Eyes through the article on the blog that was shown to him by someone who was an intern back in November of 2015, and she isn't officially signed or announced that she signed until the end of August 2016, 9 entire months later. First off, who the hell is Justin Lubliner? And that in itself is an interesting question. He's an individual that has many interviews. It's hard to find him. He had a story, and he doubled and has a decent job at covering it. He grew up in a particular musical household. The son of a doctor and a shoe designer who was super inspired by New York's hip-hop music and culture growing up. Nas and Jay-Z were my favorite artists. Illmatic was my favorite album. I remember falling in love with DJ Premier's signature vinyl scratches at 12 and wanting to learn how to make that noise. So my dad bought me turntables for my bar mitzvah, and I started collecting hip-hop records at Pursuit. I became a DJ at 14, playing at hip-hop clubs across the city. I became obsessed. When Lubliner was 15, he started hanging out at Def Jam Records. I remember being outside of LA Reid's office one day when Kanye and Jay-Z were in a meeting. That's when I wanted to go back in. A couple of bells would start ringing just this paragraph. First for me was his interest in hip-hop, particularly 90s hip-hop in the early 2000s. And I don't know about you guys, but the perception that I've had of Billie Eilish's fashion, style, and I had seen her always came across as similar to that. The baggy clothes, the type of shoes, even the shades. She basically dresses like Biggie a lot of the time. Another thing that made me take a second read was when he said he was outside of L.A. Reid's office one day when Kanye and Jay-Z were in a meeting. How does a teenager even get into a position like that? And after some digging, I was able to find out. In an article with Billboard, it reads, even at his young age, Lubliner has been chasing this kind of success for more than a decade. Growing up in New York City, he DJ'd at teen nights and retail stores to earn spending money for sneakers and vinyl records, and soon began managing local DJs himself. He sparked a friendship with the son of former Island Def Jam music group chairman CEO L.A. Reid in high school. and spent many afternoons hanging out at the Def Jam office, where he once witnessed Jay-Z and Kanye West stop by, and where he later interned. My interest in music, business, and DJing all came together when I saw Ellie Reed in his office, my favorite artist of all time. No one remembers. I had this light bulb moment of, that's what I want to do. The son of Ellie Reed that he's most likely talking about is Aaron Reed, who is the only son of Ellie Reed that is in the same age range for them to meet. And the article tries to paint his come up sort of as a rags to riches story. The odd part is that if you look at Justin's LinkedIn, you would see that the high school he went to was the Horace Mann High School, and the high school Aaron Reed went to was the Dwight School after he had done a year in boarding school. But maybe all the rich kids just run in a small circle, because both of these high schools run you 50 grand or more a year. So Justin Lubliner was a rich kid for sure. It wasn't until his time at USC that he figured out starting his own business would be a good idea. And in this very rare interview from 2014, he talks about his beginnings.
Started working with Nicky Hardwell when I was a junior in college, and I was given a lucky opportunity to start somewhere low with them. Hardwell likes to say with me, started from the bottom, now we're here. But it was fun. I mean, they're the two clients that we've been working hand in hand together since the beginning. When Hardwell first started with his management company, is when I came on, and I think Nicky was at 17,000 likes on Facebook or something, low like that. So it's been a growing experience for everybody, learning on how to develop myself as a publicist and somebody who handles a lot of marketing and watching their growth as well. So it's been a great relationship and easy for me to access the consumers and the fans because I grew up with them, having my musical taste evolve and being a fan at Ultra for the past 3 years. So I really get to understand what these people are feeling and go through it together with them.
How do you, as a junior in college, get the attention of up-and-coming international dance music superstars like Nicky Romero and Hardwell, enough to make them your clients?
It was for me, I'd always wanted to be in the music industry, so I had my eyes set on a goal, and that was to start my own business within. And, early on, I was doing a lot of passion projects, everything from internships and starting my own blog. And we had started a blog, pretty early in the stages of online, media blogging. So we had a great reputation for that. And I found myself in a position where I could offer something mutually beneficial to a bunch of these managers and agents, in that I could post their artists on my website, which at the time was one of the first Hype Machine published electronic music websites. So from there, we started matching artists, we started talking to managers. At the time, I realized, quite early that electronic music was such a growing genre, and that it really was just based online, and a lot of the connections that we had and the ideas that we had were to grow an artist's exposure online. So, utilizing the connections that we had in management projects and the blog, we kind of just created from thin air this forward-thinking, fully functional digital marketing, PR, branding, community, which consisted of myself and, leading on a bunch of my contemporaries from USC, where I went to school, helping with photos, videos, and design concepts, and just being in a very creative atmosphere. From thin air, we kind of just pushed and pushed and pushed, put pitch decks together. We reached out to a bunch of agents and managers that we were working closely with, and, eventually, landed Nicky Romero after, I think 4 or 5 months of negotiation. From there, kind of just snowballed into something a bit bigger. So that's kind of how we started.
What he's talking about here is how he got to manage and break very popular EDM artists like Nicky Romero and Hardwell, and that is the scene that he was working in for a very long time until Billie Eilish. This guy was a hard worker and clever as well. He was working at Live Nation while he was in college and was known as the EDM guy because of his blog Chubby Beavers and how much he would talk about it. Back then, blogs were the best place to spread EDM music, since these massive publications hadn't picked up on it yet, and he was able to get a lot of contacts with different agents and managers for these DJs. Eventually, he would get into contact with Hardwell and Nicky Romero, and over 4 months of back and forth, he finally convinced them to let him work with them, and he took very little commission, and it was a trial basis for a certain period of time. And he also did some creative marketing efforts that sort of changed the paradigm of how people in that section of the industry looked at marketing and PR.
But, for us, with Nicky in the beginning, it was developing on his social media. It was getting him on video concepts. It was, you know, sending people on tour to photograph him and doing videos that were a little outside the box, documentaries, stuff like that, that really made us stand out as publicists because we were offering more services than just PR. You know, one of the things that we started with Hardwell early on, which I get a lot of trouble for, was we were really kind of like the first people who did like for downloads. And there was a like for download that we had done around Electric 2012 where we had given away this kind of like Lord of the Rings gift set of a bunch of bootlegs that we had done over the past, you know, 5 years. And a bunch of those were from other artists and they got a little upset. That's when we stopped doing it. But just little things that are now kind of changing up the norm. I feel like we're you know, in the beginning, the first people on top of those. And that helped us with PR and getting things out there.
Justin transitioned into more of a consultant role at Casablanca Records, then A&R from the beginning of 2013 onwards. And funny enough, of all people this guy discovers and brings to the forefront, one of the early ones at his new position at the record label was none other than Martin Garrix.
That was really exciting. With Martin Garrix, it was a bit more spontaneous. I'd actually found a video of him on Facebook tagging himself on one of Hardwell's management team's profile, and it was a video of him in the crowd at an I Am Hardwell show doing a selfie, and it was like Hardwell's playing my new song, holy shit. And I had heard that song, and I immediately downloaded the mix, and I saw it said ITID, and I didn't know what it was. But I knew it was a Martin Garrix track, and really, really early on, this is over a year ago, I sent that into Universal, and I said, look, this track is not only unbelievable, no one knows about it, it's unreleased, it's called Animals by Martin Garrix. The kid's an absolute superstar, he's got the look, he's got the personality, he's got the energy, and we really got to do something about this. And at the time, we had just lost out on an opportunity to create a new model. The opportunity was a guy called Chris Malinchak, and the song was called So Good To Me, which is an artist that I found earlier as well. And I was like, look, like, you need to try this right now. This is the next major hit. And, you know, from there, right away, negotiations started. And luckily for me, one of my closest friends in music became his manager at the same exact time. So it's been an unbelievable experience working with him on marketing concepts and A&R concepts and being around the team. And Casablanca was incredibly helpful for the development of Animals. Plugging into top 40 when instrumental tracks really weren't pushing the boundaries at that point. So it was a really successful situation that I'm proud to have helped out in.
So we know our manager has experience in really taking smaller artists and bringing them to that next level into stardom, if not superstardom. Even though it was mostly with electronic acts, and Billie Eilish was more pop. But another article which was more propaganda than it was just coverage was titled Why All Eyes Are on Billie Eilish, the new model for streaming era success. And while the meteoric success of When We All Fall is blindsided many, is actually the result of meticulous artist development, well-calculated build a career that will last. By releasing songs leading up to its release, none of which sound too similar, and all of which showcase Eilish's chameleonic abilities. She was able to land on multiple genre playlists and be everywhere at once, says Rose. There was a moment where artists and songs were living and dying by what playlist they could be on, he explains. We made sure to be the standout on different ones, as Justin Lupiner, who signed Eilish to his Interscope Impact partner in August 2016, said. We made the blueprint for how to be an albums artist in a streaming era. This new model only sounds applicable to an artist that is signed to a major label and has a 16-person team working around the clock to make sure they get every opportunity possible. This isn't feasible for your actual bedroom artist with no connections, which is a recurring theme they try to paint Billie Eilish. And this is common in every industry plan. They need people to purchase titles over you. Otherwise, the fans will not resonate with the artist. In this case, sure, the album was created in their bedroom, but they have a massive team and connections that no other bedroom artist has. This is the best part of this Billboard article that takes us to the next section of this video. Before building her core team, Eilish had worked briefly with London-based A&R and creative services company Platoon, a partnership that O'Connell had forged, which Apple acquired in 2018. Though she was Apple's up-next artist in September 2017,
As a Beatport show, Googles have feelings too, and wrote a poem with O'Connell for Apple's 2018 holiday commercial. And in a separate article interviewing Justin Lubliner, he even suggests the same thing. Lubliner says that every decision over the past 4 years was part of a meticulous strategy for making sure that people identify her as a real artist with a unique identity, putting out a body of work. Instead of prioritizing singles, the team focused on helping establish an identity for each individual track. Multi-centered for each song. So Billie Eilish was afforded the luxury of being placed on multiple playlists due to strong relationships her team built with every major streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Music, and YouTube. Creative services company, Platoon. Because remember when I said that there was a period of about 9 months between when Billie Eilish was first discovered and when she was officially signed? What happened in this period of time is the question. It tells us in the quote, she was working with this agency. None of her brother ever mentioned their time and what they did for her. But this is far more than just an agency. If you go to Platoon's website, platoon.ai, you're just greeted with visuals in the background and mission impossible. There are no details or anything, which is odd of a company like this. It's almost like they don't even want you to know what it is they exactly do. And while many things have come out now, it was incredibly secretive back in July of 2016 when didn't know anything about it. And it's the same period of time when Billie Eilish was in the process of signing to Darkroom Interscope. To put it simply, Platoon is an incubator where they give artists the resources, funding, even creative vision to take them from nobody to eventually signing to a major record label and becoming stars. It's an industry plant farm. The most valuable is not only directly over the past year, London has art around the world scattered about thought-provoking offering a range of distribution. UK-based Brit Award winner George Smith. Signings like these have made A&R great envy of the major labels. Other artists in its network with millions of streams to their name include the likes of Mr. Easy, Malik Berry, Gabrielle Aplin, and Riley Ritchie, while artists like Billie Eilish and Stefflon Don have been incubated at Platoon before being migrated into major labels. All of the artists mentioned above are wired into modern youth culture, and to various extents have wriggled out of the crosshairs of big spending label A&R departments. The question might be, well, if they aren't signing people to a record label, what is the business model here? And what does Platoon stand to benefit from giving these unproven artists everything and more that they would get from a label? Platoon, launched in 2016, has built on AWOL's original principles, enabling artists to distribute their music independently by adding a wealth of label-like services. These include A&R, signing and developing talent, plus marketing, funding, video editing suites, recording studios, and fiscal business management. In return for these services, unlike major record companies, Platoon does not ask acts to hand over long-term rights to their music. Instead, more akin to a VC investor, it typically obtains a minority stake in an artist's own independent business. I do not think that the intention of this business is to own a small stake in these artists' business, but we will get into why later. Funny enough, Kanye West was involved in this exact business without even knowing it. He sent out a tweet in August that said, "When I spoke to Katie Baker, who was on the board, we decided to create a wide combination in the music industry, so artists have the power and transparency to be in control of our future. No more shady contracts, no more liability." And one of the founders of Platoon replied to the tweet saying, "YC for music talent. Now that's an idea. Tagging him." founded by Denzel Fiegel and Superfine. One of the
So funny.
the same question we all have had in mind. Can you maybe address the conspiratorial suggestions that keep lingering that she wasn't just an exciting organic talent in reference to scholarship, but actually some kind of industry plan, a project cooked up between you and Apple? It was honestly a very serendipitous affair. It was us in the sliding from the south the same day that we were working at the same within seconds we got dating. It was like I need to get him something. From there, she got some very early plays at week 1. There was no calculated bottom. It was just support.